Welcome back to my learning journey, or if this is your first time, welcome to the first learning journey. I am Rochella Dravis, and today, I'm going to do a deeper dive into the social discipline window. If you've watched my overview, I gave kind of several minutes of a introduction into the social discipline window. But this time I'm going to go a little bit deeper and talk about how this can be used in your classroom and thinking about your instructional practices and the way that we do things with our students. And so let me go back deeper into this window here. So as you can see, on the left side we have the green arrow where you have high control, high discipline, and where you have low control, low discipline. Then you have the orange arrow going from left to right, and this is about the support that you give. It's low support or it's really high support. And so ultimately where we want to be for there to be positive changes, whether it's between adults, maybe within a system, or maybe it is in your classroom. And so when you want positive changes, you want to think about having that high control and that high support, but you want to go over there and you want to meet with the with. And that's where things are restorative. And I had a conversation actually not too long ago about restorative. It implies that we need to fix something, maybe something that happened. But think of restorative in it's a way that you interact. You interact with a restorative lens. So if you just have way too high of control and it's real rigid with discipline, and it's all about, I do this, consequences. It is punitive. And if you have really low control, it is not, and it is neglectful. That means that you're just kind of letting things go. You're not taking that responsibility, whether it's in the classroom and holding higher expectations. You're just kind of not there physically, even though you are there physically. You're just not there mentally, supportive wise. It's also very low support. You're not giving the things that somebody needs, not giving much help, not doing many things. And then when you start moving over to the high support, it's those times where we kind of just decide, let's just do it. I'm going to do it for you. And so we're ultimately, though, where we want to be is in the with box. And that's where the positive changes, whether it's changes in the classroom, whether it's changes in a system, that's where that is going to occur. When you have and you meet up in that box, the blue box with the with. That's where you'll see positive changes happening. But what I want to do is I want to go just a little bit deeper. I want to talk about what this looks like maybe in your classroom. So this would be an opportunity for you to reflect on the structures that you have in place. So in your classroom, in the school, in the system, do you typically provide many or few limits for students and or teachers? And you want to be specific. You can write these down. You can take this page. You can copy it. But just take a minute. Put it on pause and take a minute just to put down a few of those things in your classroom. Do you typically provide many or few limits? So it's really talking about that control. Is it the punitive? Is it the not, the neglectful? So put it on pause if you want to take a few minutes. So now I'm going to move to B. So when you think about the routines that you have, are your routines, are your procedures in the classroom, in the system, are they highly structured? You know, you came in with your procedures for your classroom. This is it. This is number 1 consequence, number 2 consequence, number 3 consequence. You will do this. So take a minute again, pause the video if you need to. So think about those procedures that are highly structured. Why is that structure necessary for student success? So reflect on that first. You know, if you're the type that you bring in your procedures, they're already there for them, think about it in a way, is that structure necessary for student success? And why? Why do you feel that way? Why do you believe that? So take a few minutes, write those down, and just put this on pause. So now after you've done A and B, so now let's look at C. So when you think about those procedures and those routines that are now not highly structured, so it's more in that not box, in that neglectful box, are there additional supports needed for students to be successful? So when you think about being in that box, if you've got routines, you've got procedures, that they're the not box, are there additional things that could be used that are needed for students to be successful? So this is really you reflecting on the structure that is in your classroom, the structure that is within your system. So put this on pause and just do your reflecting. So now that you've done the top part, you've reflected on the structures. That's going to be the left side, that green side, the to side and the not side. So now we're going to be looking at the supports. The supports are across the bottom, the not again, and then the permissive, doing it for them. So in your classroom, think about what you're doing. Do you typically provide high or low levels of supports for teachers and or students? So if it's whether it's the classroom, it's your system. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I did a lot of permissive. I did a lot of 4 because it got to the point where it was like I felt helpful. Okay, so let me really just almost give you the answer. You know, yeah, write this. We did a lot of that because students grapple, and we didn't let them have that productive struggle. And I'm just as much to blame. That's how I was in the classroom, especially with maybe some students, maybe not with other students, maybe as a whole. You know, I know when I was always trying to hit the ground running, I always felt like I was more of a permissive teacher. It was like, okay, yeah, let's get this answer down. Okay, what did you put? What did you put? Oh yeah, guys, put that. So really, you know, was that really good support? So pause this if you need to. I know I keep saying that. Write down what your thoughts are. And then now moving on to B. Who were those ones that received the most support? So if I was not letting them grapple, you know, who was it in my classroom? So take a second, write those down. And then who receives the least amount of support? Which ones were I more neglectful with? I was in that not box. So go ahead, finish this page. You're reflecting for structures and you're reflecting on your support. So now moving ahead, I do want to go back. It's the same thing. It's those same 4 boxes. The to box, the neglectful box, the with box, and then the permissive box. So let's just go a little bit deeper in here. When you're doing something to students, it's that authoritative point of view that you're coming from. It is looked at as punitive. It can also be stigmatizing. You know, we put people in certain categories. It's things that you're going to see in there are the brain state, and I think about the 3 that simple view of the brain. The lower part is the red, it's the survival. Then you move to the next part, which is the emotions. And then you move to the third state, which is the executive. And that's where the thinking happens. So what happens when we are more doing something to, we are punitive in nature. And what that does is it puts us into a brain state of that simple view, either into the emotions or into the survival. And if a student is in survival or the emotions, they're not in the thinking brain. And so what we need to do is start moving away from that doing to. Yeah, I get it. There are some things that we do have to do to them. But when we look at the way that we interact as a whole, we don't have to interact as a whole and do things to people, to students all the time. We don't have to do that. So now I'm going to move down to the do nothing box. This is where someone is just uninvolved, maybe ignoring, maybe just not even responsive to questions being asked, hands being raised, just not being there mentally. It does have a negative impact. It puts people into the emotions. They become reactive, they become defensive. So once again, I think of that simple view of the brain. And if a kiddo is sitting in, or an adult is sitting in the emotions or the survival, they're not able to do that thinking. So whether we're being punitive, whether we are ignoring, we are contributing to where a student or another adult might be in their state, their brain states. So now let me go ahead and move back over to the right to the permissive. This is where the excuses, the reasoning is happening. This does still connect with those negative behaviors. It reinforces that. So that brain state that they're in is this emotions, which can put them into that survival state, and it's just very passive. And so then when we go back up to the with box, this is authority also, but it's authority that is used in connecting, building relationships, and it's authority being used when you have a trusting environment. So yeah, you can be authoritative and it can be punitive, but what you want to do is you want to move that over. And of course, you have to build the relationships first to make that trusting environment. It is going to help with those connections with kiddos or adults. It is going to bring accountability. The cause and effect is definitely there, and it is pro-social. So the brain state here, you've moved out of survival, you've moved out of emotional, and what you've done is created an environment that puts kiddos, puts adults in the third brain state, the executive state. And that's where thinking happens. That's where problem solving happens. So here next, I have just some questions that has to do with the boxes and going more in depth. So put this on pause and go through these 5 questions. Which brain state best supports learning and grappling with rigorous content? Because that's where we are in our classrooms. Student behaviors that indicate a brain state of anxiousness. Student behaviors that indicate a state of being relaxed and alert. Student behaviors that indicate a brain state of being reactive and defensive. Student behaviors that indicate a state of being passive and enabled. So think about the kiddos in your classroom. What are some of those behaviors that you see in any of those 4? And once again, put this on pause so that you can reflect. So then what I want to get you to is an action plan. And this is a great tool to put this on pause, look at it, and try to come up with some suggestions for in your class